What up? What up? What up? Welcome back to another edition of Green with Envy post game live, part of the 617 podcast, and proudly brought to you by Crowworthy. And we are happy to be back after the All Star break. As always, checking in. This is your boy, Will Weir. I will explain the garb and the attire later. Don't worry. You have tuned in to the right show. We are still a Celtics podcast. I will explain that in just a minute. But joining me as he does each and every time, a very belated happy Larry Legend birthday to my guy, my best friend, co-host, and the coach of our podcast, the one and only Greg Manakis. Happy birthday, bro.
Yo, 33 years old. It feels good. I hadn't had a drink since New Year's Eve, but your boy sent me a bottle of whiskey, right? So I got this whiskey courtesy of my guy Will Weir right here. Thank you very much, brother. 33 feels good. Another year around the sun, and Boston Celtics gave me a nice birthday present tonight.
Yeah, man, it's feeling good right now. For those of you that are listening to us right now, whether you're listening on the podcast the day after, or if you're here on the live stream, joining us via Twitter, Facebook, and or YouTube. Number one, if you're on YouTube, jump into the mix, start leaving us comments. We're happy to engage. We will bring guys up on, be able to put some of your questions here onto the screen with us. Happy to have you joining with us. It's a fun ass time. All-Star game break. A little worried the momentum might drop. Celtics seem to pick up right where they left off, but before we get to that, Greg, how was your All-Star break, man? We just mentioned it was your birthday. Anything cool going on? It's been like a week or so since we really told the people what's going down here.
Yeah, I mean, All-Star festivities were just plain stupid. I hated the dunk contest. Obviously, that was terrible. My break was great, man. I was just chilling. Like I said, I haven't had a drink since New Year's Eve, so I actually broke that the other day for my birthday, which was on was yesterday on Wednesday. So I went to Lucky Robot with Danielle. I've just been chilling, man. Things have been good. So Will and I, for those of you that are tuning in for the first time, we live down here in Austin, Texas, born and raised in Dorchester. Boston Public Schools kids, went to Boston Latin School. But down here in Austin, Texas, we had a snow day and it didn't snow at all. But anytime it's like super cold, that's what happens when it gets
Yo, I
super
had I
cold.
had to
We end up with a
spatula
snow
my
day.
car for the second time in 3 weeks.
Yeah, you don't have any of the gear down here, that's for sure, to shovel out the car. But we didn't need to shovel. Got a day off from work today. And it was pretty great, man. The Celtics, like I said, gave me a great birthday present tonight, so I'm super stoked about that. How you been though, bro? I miss you, man.
I know, man, right? It's crazy. We live in the same city. We're best friends, but because we do this so often, it feels like we see each other in person more than we actually do, just because we're together virtually so much. But things are good, man. First and foremost, I gotta explain the jersey. So if
Yeah.
you're tuning in live, and I'll explain if you listen on the podcast right now, I am rocking a vintage New York Patrick Chewing jersey. We'll say greatest Massachusetts born NBA player of all time, NBA 75, Patrick Ewing. Shout out to you, my guy. But what had happened was myself and Greg made a bet with our good friend Matt Liptak. He's our essentially our Knicks correspondent. He's been on the podcast a couple different times, big Knicks fan. And that game in January, we put a little bet on it. I think it was either right before or right after his son Finley was born. And so pretty much we put Celtics gear on the line against Knicks gear on the line. Either we were going to get baby pictures that lasted a lifetime
So
with baby
close.
Finn and some sweet, sweet, sweet ass Green with Envy 617 podcast Celtic gear, or Greg and I were going to have to come on to the podcast wearing Knicks jerseys. 25-point lead, RJ Barrett. You know the story. You know what happened. But like I said last podcast, I think it might have been the turning point. So, one thing to keep in mind here, Green with Envy co-hosts, we always pay our debts. So shout out to my guy Liptak. I got the jersey on for you tonight. And by the way, it feels like a fucking corset. It's just tight. Like I got I don't know. There's a lot going on, a lot popping out that you can't see or you don't want to see. So you're welcome that this screen is limited. But no, dude, in my off time, something I got back to is I was missing basketball, right? Because
No
like you
doubt.
said, we've had this debate before about the All-Star game. All-Star weekend in general. If I'm around, I'll tune in. I'm not really making time for it. A little upset I missed some of the stuff going off in the second half of
Yeah, that
the
was cool. That was
All-Star
definitely
game.
cool.
I caught the very end of the first half, and then I watched the ceremony with the NBA 75, and then I kind of was like, I'm not gonna make Lorena sit through this. Like, let's put on Euphoria, whatever. Like
Euphoria is dope
just
this
kind
week.
of Euphoria is great. Euphoria is a great show. If you're not tuning in, you should. But from that, man, I was like jonesing for basketball, and I was like, I just gotta go shoot around, and I had Monday off for President's Day. Did you have Monday off for President's Day or?
No, because we had that other snow day, I actually had to go to work.
Ah, okay, got you. So I didn't even know I had it off until like Friday afternoon at like 2 p.m. So I
Okay.
didn't plan for anything. I had nothing planned. So I was just like, I don't know what to do with my day. There's nothing to prep for really. Like there's no game coming up. There's like I didn't know what to do. And so I just was like, you know what? I got to go find a way to shoot around. So I did two different
Ooh.
things. One, I went and well, I tried to buy a good basketball, but Dick's Sporting Goods and everywhere else was all sold out. So I had to order it online. But I took my old crappy basketball, found a hoop outside, and was shooting around, and it was good. It was fun, but it made me like, yo, I need the real thing. Got my good basketball in the mail yesterday. Took off from work a little early. Found this little rec center around the corner. Really weird hours to go shoot around, so I shot around from like 3:30 p.m. to 4:30, just completely,
I love
abandoned
that.
work.
I love that.
Abandoned work, bro. It was so fucking euphoric. There's nothing better than shooting hoops, and I still got it.
Oh, you still got it.
Well, if we factor in, like, if I had to run up and down, I might not have it as much,
But just
but, like,
standstill shooting,
just,
you're
like,
good?
stationary shooting and I played a little 4-on-4 with some, like, high school age kids for a
Nice,
little
nice.
bit. They recognized the game. They saw the transition hezzy pull up three,
Yep,
with nobody
yep,
guarding me,
yep.
splash,
Just don't take a layup.
Yeah, exactly, dude, I stayed out of the paint. I hit a couple no look passes. One of the kids was like, "Oh, I saw that." I was like, "I appreciate that, man." I was playing a little loose with it. It was fun though. There's like a lot of high school kids that probably like kind of reminded me of when I've like played with you and your team before.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I don't want to bore everybody with like how washed I am right now, but I will give you really quickly. I've developed carpal tunnel syndrome in my right wrist. So I literally can't shoot a basketball right now with my right wrist, but I have been going to the gym. So every time I go to the gym, I've been shooting around, but I've been shooting around lefty. And I'm ambidextrous, so that stroke's
Get
looking
that
pretty
Kenny
nice.
Anderson
I
shot.
got that Kenny Anderson shot. So shout out Kenny Anderson, come on the pod. Um, but I'm not going to bore everybody with how wet the jumper is right now with the left hand, but it's looking pretty nice.
No, that's dude. I've seen it in motion. I know you can. I know you can shoot with that left hand shot. So I know it's legit. But I will say I'm actually still sore today as well. Like that's also part of it. Is I'm
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
we're
pretty
washed,
sore.
man. We're washed.
We are very washed. And then one last funny note, and I want to shout out my guy Brady, who I was playing with yesterday. I assume this kid was like 17. He's probably the best kid I was playing with. Like he had a little like hop step. He's like probably 6'3". He's got like a little bit of like mobility and agileness to him, and like he was easily the best player out there. But I thought he's a little bit younger. He was talking to me before I left, and he was telling me he's 20. He goes to Texas A&M. And he's like, yeah, man, like you come here often. Well, first of all, he asked how old I was. I was like, man, I'm like 32. He was like, oh, getting ready for men's league. I was like, not even, man. I'm just trying to break a sweat. Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
basically baseline of what I was trying to do. And he told me he was trying out. He was like, "Yo, he's like, if you come back here, you're gonna see me working. Like I'm here going out for Texas A&M, trying to walk on my senior year."
I love
Um,
that.
I was
Go
like,
get it,
"Yo,
Brady.
good for you." I was like, "Yo, Brady, give me this energy." And then he left me with a great line because I was talking to him for a bit. He goes, "Yeah, man, I'll see you later, and maybe you'll see me on TV pretty soon." I was like, "Yo, Brady, be that white boy at the end of the bench waving the towel. That is aspirational to say that you've been on TV and that's your goal.
I
Get it,
love that.
Brady."
I love that. Did you tell him to tune into the live stream? Did you tell him to watch the
I did
Celtics and
not.
then
I
tune
did
into
not.
this live stream?
I'm not gonna lie. I was very thrown off by his energy because I was like, I wasn't huffing and puffing, but I was tired at this point. I was like
No
getting
doubt,
ready. I
no
was
doubt.
like, I was like winding myself down, getting ready to like take off my basketball shoes and leave.
Yeah.
But I just enjoyed his energy he left with it. So, with that, let's get
Speaking of
into
good
some.
energy,
Speaking of good energy, let's get into it right now. The Boston Celtics, All-Star break or not, are still rolling. And yeah, I know they played Bizarro Nets, but you know what? Let's get into a morning box score and let's talk a little bit about it. So, Celtics 129, Nets 106. Celtics putting some distance between themselves and the Nets right now in the standings. That's a little side note that's going to be important as the Nets start to get healthy. But let's hit a couple of the Celtics individual statistics. First, Jason Tatum, 30 points, 4 assists, 7 rebounds, 4 of 9 from the three-point line, 6 of 7 from the free throw line, 10 of 20 overall. Let's see, Robert Williams, 4 or 5 from the field. He had 12 points and 11 rebounds tonight. Jaylen Brown, 18 points. Marcus Smart, 15 points. Derek White, 13 points. Grant Williams, 10 points. And I don't, there's not a box score statistic for it, but confidence in Grant
oh yeah,
Williams.
oozing it,
I,
baby,
I, don't- I don't
oozing
I
it.
don't I don't know how there's not a number that's going to associate with that, but if you're watching these games, Grant Williams' confidence level is in a different stratosphere from anything we've seen. Just like he's just oozing it right now. But he's someone we'll talk about here in just a minute. Like I said, final score is 129 to 106. You can kind of look at the stats here a little bit. Celtics just shot the ball way better than the Nets tonight. They're still without their guys. We'll have we'll have a bigger test with them coming in the coming weeks here. But for now, Greg, where do you want to start? The vibes are just flowing. So tell me where you want to start.
Oh man, let's start. I mean, let's just start with the energy. Let's start with the vibes, man, because I mean, the team just looks like they're having a good time. As you were saying with Grant Williams, I mean, that dude is smiling. He's giving Jason Tatum shit during the game for not throwing that alley oop. Like, it's great when the role player can give the star some shit. And that was great because Grant really wanted to catch that oop. Grant got the hops this year, so he really wanted to catch that oop, and JT just wasn't willing to give that ball up. So I was really digging Grant's energy and just the energy of the bench throughout, man. Like, from the very beginning of the game, everybody on the bench was standing up. Everybody was cheering. That one game against the Pistons before the break. By the way, Pistons beat the Cavs tonight, so we're one game back of the Cavs right now. That was kind of just an aberration in what we've seen lately for this team. Marcus Smart, Robert Williams back in the game. The defense is smothering. It's elite. Yes, I know we're playing the Bizarro Nets. We don't see Kevin Durant, right? We don't see Kyrie Irving. We're going against Patty Mills and Seth Curry, but they can still beat you if you're not careful. And the Celtics didn't allow that to happen. As Ime said over the summertime, we know how to lock Patty ass down.
Yeah, I love seeing that clip going around. And like you said, it's the Bizarro Nets. We know we know who was out there. We know that this is more of their second unit than it is of their first unit that we're seeing. But with that, watching this game, I tweeted this during the game. We know that Ime's been putting in this switching system since day one. But I think the most impressive part is there was a split moment in the first quarter, and it happened many times throughout, where the Celtics are switching on ball, and then on the back line are still switching to get the right matchups.
Mm-hmm.
And it almost was, we just passed the Winter Olympics, which the Winter Olympics stinks. So I'm sure none of you watched it. Like, I didn't watch any of it, but that's what they do, like choreograph, like figure skating and shit. Like that shit was so synchronized that it felt like, it was so purposeful in the way that they were moving that, like, I still take that, like, that's translatable. That type of practice is translatable. And so that's the type of stuff that when I look at a game like tonight, that I can take away and be like, hey, we're not going to be able to lock every team down like this with a bench unit, but those type of practice moments, those are going to pay dividends when we look down the line. Was there anyone else tonight that stood out to you? I mean, pretty much everybody on the Celtics had a really good game. I'd say the only guy maybe offensively, Al didn't have a great game, but I thought he played really well defensively. So is there anyone else that really stood out to you that you wanted to make a note of?
I want to give a shout out to JB. 6 assists, 1 turnover.
Yeah,
We've been giving JB a lot of shit for his inability to be an efficient playmaker. Every once in a while he'll have a really nice play, but for the most part, he struggles to get people easy baskets. And I don't know if it was because the Nets defense was just really piss poor tonight, or if because the Celtics offense was really flowing the way it was flowing. But he seems to, because he's making reads kind of like in space and he's doing everything quickly, he's not going up against set defenses. And that was the thing that I mentioned on the pod before, is when Jaylen Brown gets the ball and he has it on the wing and he stares down against a set defense, he's not going to be able to just blow by anybody. And he was driving into defenders and he wasn't just keeping the game simple. And it seems like, with the addition of Derek White and with the new improved play from Marcus Smart, everybody on the team is kind of buying into this. And I think that's really helping JB, because you saw tonight, man, 6 assists, 1 turnover. And it seemed like those assists were not just like, kind of like handed to him on a silver platter. He had to make the right play, the right basketball play. And that's where I think, transitioning into Derek White, I want to talk about him next. But what were your thoughts on JB tonight?
Yeah, I mean, at one point, I know Stan Van Gundy pointed it out, and he used Jaylen Brown as the example. He wasn't necessarily highlighting JB, but just talking about, driving with purpose. It collapses the defense and the different momentum it creates as far as being able to swing the ball and get an open shot, or in this case, I think it ended up with a lob to Rob Williams. And so, it's these type of baby steps. I don't think every night you can expect JB to be, 6 assists, 1 turnover. He's just not that that type of player yet, but it takes these type of games to build those reps to ultimately be able to have that in your tool bag when you get into a key moment. And tonight everybody's shot was kind of hitting. There wasn't really anybody that wasn't hitting shots for the most part. But for a guy like JB, who you're expected night in and night out to be the number two guy, at worst, the number two guy offensively, there's going to be a night, especially in the playoffs, where just your shot's not falling. So how else are you a weapon out there? What else can you do? And so it's these type of reps that are going to help him have, that curveball. We always talk about having multiple moves, or we use our baseball background, having multiple pitches to go to. This is the type of game that helps to build him, get those reps. And then, talking about a guy like Derek White, I mean, it feels it's really weird that he's only been on the team for, this is his fourth game, I believe. Like, it
Yeah.
feels like Derek White has been on this team for, not even just the beginning of the year, but for years.
For sure. Derek White's amazing, man. Like he doesn't have much in his bag. Let's just get that out of there, right? Like, you're not going to go to Derek White in crunch time and be like, go create something, right? Everything he does is just within the flow of the game, and he just makes the right play over and over. One play that really stood out to me, it ended up in a missed shot. Peyton Pritchard ended up missing a three, but Derek White got the ball on the break, and he's always in the right spot for an outlet pass. He's just like always flying up and down the court. And then he was just, he took two very simple dribbles into the middle of the court, waited for some guy to take one step towards him off of Peyton Pritchard in the three in the short corner, and then dished the ball to Peyton Pritchard, got him a wide open shot. That just doesn't really happen too often with the Celtics because, guys just tend to hold the ball a split second too longer, and he does not have sticky hands whatsoever. That ball gets out quickly, and that's what I love about him, man. He reminds me a lot of Caruso. He reminds me a lot of Lonzo Ball, and the way that he's able to just create things just by being a smart player. And that's what I've loved so far with Derek White. Like, he's not going to be a guy that we can really rely on when things get really tough, but he's going to be a guy, the connecting piece that people have been talking about all year. He is one of those connecting pieces, and I love everything that I've seen from him so far.
Yeah, something else I noticed about Derek White, I'm curious to know if you noticed this as well, is that, when he gets in the lane, he's really great at like manipulating his body to get that little floater off, to get that little
Mm.
shot off, like kind of the way that he'll almost, and sometimes this is what I still can't tell because I haven't watched him quite enough, is if he's reacting to what the defense is doing or if he's manipulating the defense into him getting to a spot where he wants to get to. And I do think that's something that's just really unique. He just feels very in control. It's like kind of like resemblant of his entire like arsenal, is he just feels very in control because, like when he goes to the rim, he's not going to dunk over anybody. He's not an athletic specimen. He's not, like you said, his bag is relatively limited, but it's his IQ. And I think those are the type of guys that it seems like Brad and Ime are really leaning into as, where do we find these guys? Like, of course, if they can be freak athletes, if they can be, Anthony Edwards, we're not going to turn those guys down. But where can we find, and with our role players within the margins, where can we find these guys that always, seem to be making the right play and know where to be at the right time?
Yeah, and I think that was the biggest point in bringing him in. When we think about who we sent out, Dennis Schroeder and Josh Richardson, although Josh Richardson had done, a lot for this team so far, he just wasn't the guy that we needed. He was a nice fit. He fit better than Schroeder fit. But when you juxtapose that with the 4-game sample size we've had of Derek White, where he's seamless. He looks like
Yeah.
the Celtic, and it looks like he's going to be on the Celtics for the rest of his contract. Like, already, like I'm feeling pretty good about that, just because he's the perfect complementary piece to what we see out what Jason Tatum needs, what Jaylen Brown needs. And I just love everything that you're saying about him. Like, you mentioned his ability to use his body. That's one of those things, as we've gotten older and as we're
Yeah.
hooping and we realize, oh, we can't really blow by anybody. We need to start like using our
To be
butt a
fair, I
little
never
bit
could,
more.
but
Yeah. But you've always been able to use, you're 6'2", but you don't
yeah.
play above the rim. You play, you play in the paint. Will's not 6'2". I'm just kidding. But Derek White
6'3".
just, Derek White just is able to like get his shoulders into people's chests, and then he's so strong, and he doesn't need to jump to get the ball up towards the rim, that he's able to just use his strength and finish through people rather than over people. And I think, that he just knows what he can do. He knows his limitations, and he does them really well.
Yeah. And, We get Brooklyn again in a couple weeks. This could be
Yeah,
a
that'd be a big
different
test.
scenario. We'll see from all reports before the game. Looks like KD is back to practicing, so he's maybe a week or 2 weeks or less, somewhere in that range away. Ben Simmons, you got to figure with the reconditioning. I don't know what condition he was in coming into it, but you figure he's probably about 2 weeks out, somewhere in that time frame. Kyrie's playing road games, and it looks like the mandate is going to be lifted in New York City. So within the next month or so, Kyrie should be available full time. So by the next time the Celtics play Brooklyn, it shouldn't quite be the zombie squad that we got today. But looking ahead for the Celtics here, so they take home the win against Brooklyn tonight. This weekend continues kind of almost a nice little warm-up series. Detroit and Indiana is what they got over the weekend. Now, Detroit did just beat us, so can never take anything lightly. But coming out of the break, that's a nice 3-game split to get going. And then you hit March, and this is where things start to heat up pretty quickly. Right after that, you see the Hawks, the Memphis Grizzlies, Brooklyn, and what could be, a more well-formed Brooklyn team, and Charlotte. That's a tough 4-game stretch to start off March. Looking ahead here, Greg, something I want to start us talking about tonight is just the Eastern Conference in general, because it's a little bit crazy. Do you think these next 2 games are, I hate the word must win, but whereas tight as the Eastern Conference is, and you just mentioned Cleveland lost tonight, they're a game away from fifth place, playing teams like Detroit and Indiana over this next stretch. Is that kind of a must-win game just because you gotta pile up those W's against teams you should be getting them versus?
Yeah, I mean, if we want to get to 50 wins, which is I think should be our goal, right? We're 15 wins away now, right? We
Yeah.
needed 16 wins to get to 50. So we're 15 wins away. I think every game is a must win for this team right now because you don't want to end up in a play-in scenario. You want to hopefully get to the point where you have home court in the playoffs. And it just might so happen that the Celtics play so well just with their luck that they're going to get so high up into the conference and end up playing a fucking healthy Brooklyn Nets squad in the first round.
Yeah,
Like who knows if that's
everybody's
going to
gonna be
happen.
diving at the last week of the season to avoid that 2 seed.
Exactly, exactly. So, I mean, yeah, every game's super important, man. And you saw what happened with the Cavs tonight. I don't think Garland played. I don't know why he was
Okay.
out, but I don't think he played in that game. And they ended up losing to the Pistons. We didn't have Marcus Smart and Robert Williams the last time we played against the Pistons, and we lose to them. There's so much talent around the league. Like even the Pacers, even though they suck and they're not trying to win, on the wrong night, if one guy gets hurt, JB hurt his wrist at the end of the game. Like who knows if he's going to miss any time with that? That's been a troublesome wrist for him. So like maybe Tyrese Halliburton goes crazy and tells the Celtics like, hey, you should have traded for me. Like you never know what's going to happen. But I just think the Celtics right now, as everyone's been talking about, their defense is just so good, man. As long as they're healthy, I don't see many teams without upper echelon one-on-one isolation players being able to do anything against this defense. It's just too good, and I could think against the Pistons, that was just a rare game where we were undermanned and then we were looking forward towards the All-Star break. That's
Mhm.
basically what happened. It was the
Yeah.
perfect trap game. So, I'm interested to see how we bounce back against the Pistons because I think the Celtics do have something to prove there. But to answer your question, yeah, man, every game is super important in these last 21 games.
Okay, so with that, and I agree with you. I think that Pistons game is a bit of an aberration. I'm not really putting too much stock in that. If they come back and beat us again, maybe the Pistons just have our fucking number. I don't know. That would be weird. But
Sadiq Bey.
yeah, it's just a Sadiq Bey. It's just he's got that green streak in his hair just because he knows that's who he goes off against is the Celtics. But our guy Zach Muller at Boston Diehards asked this on Twitter earlier that he was saying, should I feel crazy that I think the Celtics can make an Eastern Conference run here? And it was a question that over the last day or two, I started to mull myself like, is there a sneaky window that could be open in the Eastern Conference just because of all the chaos? And if we go ahead and wipe the slate clean and we assume fresh health, I think it's a little bit more murky, but that's just not what it is right now. Could be different a month and a half from now, 2 months from now, whatever. Like could be different, but is there a sneaky window?
Yeah, I think so, man. I mean, we're 3.5 out right now. Is that what we are? Or I mean,
So right
after
now
tonight.
I don't know how some of these games as we're recording are gonna finish up, but right now we're in the 6th seed. We're 4 games out of the 1 spot, which is held as a tie right now between Miami and Chicago, and we're 1 game ahead of the play-in, which right now is the 7th seed, the Raptors, but we're 3.5 up on the Nets, who are the 8th seed in that play.
Hmm. Yeah, I think we have a legitimate shot, man. As I said, as long as we're healthy, Dude, what team are we scared of at the top? And then when you look at who we play versus who other teams play, I know that a lot of teams at the top of the conference end up playing against each other towards the end of the season, and we don't really have that issue. I think we play Chicago once, Cleveland once, and Milwaukee once. Is that what's going on at the time? I'm
Let me
pretty sure I
see
saw
here.
something like that where
Yeah, it's something like that.
yeah, so we're not going up against the cream of the crop, and other people are. So if teams kind of beat up on each other, and to your point earlier, the Celtics take care of business against the teams that they need to take care of business against, like in getting home court in the playoffs, I think is very doable. So it depends on what you mean by window, what the sneaky window is. Is it like make it to
I'm
the
saying making
finals?
a finals. I'm saying a sneaky finals run. That's the window I'm talking about.
I think so, man. I'm starting to
Yeah.
believe. I'm starting to believe. Like when we get up by 20 points now, I no longer start like panicking and sweating. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's probably means you're heading in the right direction. But yeah, I'm talking about like a sneaky finals run, and it's like I look around the East, right? And so I think right now, if I had to handicap it, I think Milwaukee and Miami to me are probably the two that if I absolutely had to put money on the line, those are the two right now, knowing their current circumstances, what I would probably put my money on happening. But you look at Miami and like there's one side of the argument where they're as good as they are, yet their best 6 or 7 guys have played a total of about a game and a half together.
Mhm.
Now, you can obviously look at it as a very positive thing, but also on the other side, like when it's crunch time and these guys haven't played together, maybe that's not such a good thing, even though they've been able to keep, the boat afloat and find guys like Max Strus and, one of the Martin brothers. I forget which one it is, so I'm not going to mess up that name, but one of the Martin twins, he's on their team doing well. So, they've got that going for them. The Bulls, like to your point, like I think the Bulls are a great story. I think, even without Lonzo, Caruso, Levine's been in and out, like the fact that they're still the 1 seed just blows my mind. Like they've surpassed my expectations. I was wrong
DeRozan.
on what I thought they were going to be, but I think I'm still picking the Celtics in a series against the Bulls. You know what I mean? Like keep going down the list. 76ers, I know Harden hasn't come back. We just beat them by 50. Of course, I'm super scared of like, Harden and Embiid, they just click and they go supernova. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, I think their ceiling puts them, right up under that Miami Bucks, but there's still time for them to gel. Their defense isn't, as stingy.
Stingy.
That's a go. There we go. Isn't as stingy as it once was. The Bucks, like their big three can go up against anybody. They got the
Mhm.
championship pedigree. We know who they are. We saw them in the postseason last year. Giannis is probably the best player in the league, or second best, third best, whatever you want to classify that as. But their depth isn't great. They traded DiVincenzo. Connaughton goes down right after. They're relying on a lot of Grayson Allen, Wes Matthews, and Bobby Portis. Brooke
Mhm.
Lopez might not come back. Who knows what Ibaka's got left? Cavs, great story. Love them. Darius Garland's awesome. If you're
So
not
good.
watching the Cavs,
So good.
make them a league pass appointment.
Yeah,
Like
he's amazing.
trust me, you're not gonna be disappointed. Celtics are beating them in the first round. Like Celtics are beating them in a playoff series if they
Mm,
play them.
I
They're the
like
only
that.
team above
Confidence.
us. They're the only team above us that I feel 100% the Celtics are beating. Everyone else, I think they can beat, but I'm also could probably make an argument for the other way. Raptors, they're also very young. No one wants to see them. And then the Nets, it's just up to KD. If KD's there, they're a fucking problem. They can beat anybody. They probably will beat anybody if KD's actually KD, which they almost did to the Bucks last year. But you lay all that out and it kind of breaks the right way, and the Celtics are still healthy. I mean, I feel like it's hard to make the argument that there's not at least a little bit of a window. And if they get those breaks, like they may smash through that window and end up in the finals, which seems crazy where we were a couple of weeks ago and where the way we were talking about this team, but it's starting to feel a little less and less crazy.
I don't know whose energy you have right now. Do you have Brady's energy or do you have Grant Williams's energy? Because you got one of them, man. I love the confidence. It sounds good.
Just saying.
Very, very articulate, very well spoken. Yeah, I'm jealous of how you feel about this team. I too am getting that giddy feeling every time I watch them. I'm like, ooh, like all the stuff that we were hoping was going to happen is starting to happen. Like I like it. Marcus Smart playing like a true point guard. 5 for 6 from 3, probably not
Yeah.
going to happen every night.
Yeah.
But Marcus Smart only took 6 shots tonight, right? And they were
Right.
all those 3-pointers. He's playing
And
great
they were all good
basketball.
shots too.
All great shots.
One heat check in there, but we'll,
Yeah,
we'll
give him
allow
that.
that.
We'll give
We'll
him
allow
that. We'll
that.
give him that. It was in the second quarter, like who
Yeah,
gives a
exactly.
shit? Jason Tatum starting to get used to his body, right? Earlier in the year, we were talking about how like he almost
Sorry,
was
that,
like
that sounds like you're talking about like a teenager. He's starting to get used to his body.
he
He's
is,
feeling,
he
he's
is.
exploring. He's just exploring. That's all. He's exploring his
No
body.
19 jokes here, but he is. He is. Like at the beginning of the season, he plays through his shoulders. I talk about this a lot, right? His shoulders are so big. There are some guys that kind of play more through their core and some guys that play more through their shoulders. Like Giannis Antetokounmpo, he plays through his shoulders. Kawhi Leonard, he plays through his shoulders. Jason Tatum is one of those guys that's a little top heavy, and it seemed like he was starting to fall down more than normal. Like he has never really had like great balance when he was driving
Yeah.
to the basket. But this season, it was like for whatever reason, whatever extra 10 pounds he's carrying through his shoulders was just like toppling him over on drives. And now he's really starting to figure out the angles and to figure out when to get his shoulder into people. And he's playing like an MVP right now, dude. Like I don't want to throw those three letters out there too casually, but he has been playing to that level. Jaylen Brown is starting to figure out how to be the perfect second fiddle to Jason Tatum. There doesn't seem to be that ego. Maybe that was just media driven. Maybe it was just all in our imaginations. Then he just needed to play better and get healthy. But there doesn't seem to be that. It seems like the pecking order is pretty clear. Grant Williams might think he deserves to be at the top of that pecking order right now.
Yeah,
It's like, give me the ball, guys. Give me the ball.
Big confidence, Grant.
Al Horford has found the fountain of youth. The jump shot from three wasn't there tonight, 1 for 6 from three tonight. But in general, as they mentioned on the broadcast, he's been 40%, or I think since the calendar turned. So he's starting to get it together, and his defense has been great all year. Our boy, Lob Williams, go get your Lob Williams hoodie at crowworthy.com. Those Lob Williams hoodies are going like hotcakes. Make sure you go get one. Lob Williams is playing great basketball. The fact that they got him in that rover spot, as they talked about, putting him on the worst shooter on the floor, I don't know that it's going to work against every team, but it's working against most teams right now. You know, if you want, do you want to stop there and talk about that?
Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute, because I was thinking about
I
that.
could keep going on and on with the positives.
Yeah. But like, I think that's an interesting story point to talk about, because tonight it was pretty easy to say, okay, James Johnson, go ahead and take 7 threes. Like, you know what I mean? We'll live with that. Or even Bruce Brown, who had a nice night. And I like Bruce Brown as a player, but like, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Like if Bruce Brown's going to score, 17 points and take whatever shots, I'm not even looking at his stats right now, but like you're going to win that game most likely. You know what I mean? Like that's a game that you're going to win, or you're going to take the chance that, hey, if Bruce Brown takes 5 threes and makes 4, hey, kudos to him. That's not going to happen every night. We'll in a 7-game series, we'll live with that result. And I'm curious to think, like, what are some of the matchups and teams where you see like this could be a problem? Because like immediately, and we're not going to play them in the playoffs. But I thought of a team like the Suns. Like the Suns, who are so well rounded, like you can't do that and just leave Mikal Bridges or even Jay Crowder, just leave Rob Williams on them and they're getting wide open threes. Like that's going to end up being a problem, you know? So I'm trying to look through right now and see who could be a problem.
I think the Bulls. I think the Bulls, if they're healthy, could be a real issue for the Celtics, just because they have those guys that can play in isolation in Zach LaVine and in DeMar DeRozan. Like no one is stopping DeMar DeRozan this year in the mid post. He's like, he's not Michael Jordan, but he's playing efficiently. Like in Chicago, he's looking a lot like him this year. Like when you
that's a guy that's in the MVP talk. I know you mentioned it with Tatum. That's a guy that's probably right there in the 4 or 5 slot.
When you break a Wilt Chamberlain scoring record, you're doing something good. And like the hyperbole of like mentioning your name next to Michael Jordan just for a year, not for a career, not saying he's the greatest player of all time, but no one can stop the guy this year. So like if we go up against the Bulls and they have all these guys that are super athletic and super switchable and that are very similarly built to how the Celtics are built, but maybe not quite as much on the defensive end, because DeRozan and LaVine are not Tatum and Brown on the defensive end, but they do have Caruso, they do have Lonzo Ball, both who can knock down a shot if left open. And then Vucevic, right? Vucevic could be a real problem for the Celtics, just his ability to stretch the floor. So I'm a little bit concerned about the Bulls. I know we beat them the last time we played them. And we were up on them big early in the year. So who knows, man? Maybe we are just the better team. Cleveland is a team. You said you think we would beat them in the first round. I'm a little concerned about Cleveland as well, just because
Tell me more.
Their defense, man. They're one of the teams that could really give us issues on, like tonight. There was no issue, right, with Brooklyn. We just sawed through them. Our defense led to offense. I don't know that there's anybody on the Celtics that can really, really lock down Darius Garland. He's like that water bug point guard.
He's that very stereotypical point guard that we always talk about, that we have pretty much since when we had like the Marcus Smart, Avery Bradley backcourt. That was a great backcourt for like the larger physical guards, and then the quick guards Avery Bradley would take. But since then we really haven't had anyone that can really handle those type of guys.
Yeah. So Darius Garland scares me. He definitely scares me. And that, like, I'm not too worried about Atlanta, although I might regret saying that.
They give us trouble, but I mean, I had a hard time believing in them all of last year, and
Mhm.
obviously they went to the conference finals. But until they prove a little bit more this year, I'm gonna still feel pretty confident about us in the
Yeah.
series with them.
Because, like, I think the obvious teams, right? The Nets, if they're fully healthy, I don't know that we're beating the Nets. Like, let's just be real.
Yeah,
Kevin Durant's just amazing. Ben Simmons could give us a lot of issues just with his size, and I think he could guard. So imagine Ben Simmons and Tatum going at it, and then if like Ben Simmons gets tired, they just put Kevin Durant on him like in the fourth
yeah.
quarter. It's gonna be tough for Tatum.
It'd be
So
real tough. Yeah, and Bruce
yeah,
Brown did a decent job for a while, and like I think when he's the
yeah,
fifth guy, you know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. I'm not saying right now tonight he was like their second best player, so it's a little
Mhm.
different. But
Yeah, and then Milwaukee, they've got guys that can hit open shots. I feel like we match up well with them, but
Mhm.
Giannis scares the shit out of me, as he should, right? He's the MVP. So I don't know, man. There's just the East is stacked as we go through all these teams. Like nobody really terrifies me outside of Kevin Durant.
Mhm.
But
I'd say
I'm
Giannis
not I'm
too,
not
just
like super
individually.
confident against any of them either. You know what I mean? Like
It's
it's
it's a
weird.
weird mix, right? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And that's why Cleveland's the only one that I was like definitively like I feel like we're winning that series because
Hmm.
if we end up against whether it's Miami, Chicago, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, Brooklyn, if they're healthy, like I can't say 100% certainty we're winning that, and I got to wait and see like who's actually injured, who's actually playing, like, and even then, I'm not sure I'd be able to say it, with 100% emphasis, like, hey, that's how I feel. But it's a crazy time in the East. But let me leave you with one more stat here that I looked up earlier today.
Okay.
So obviously the big stat with Celtics going around during the All-Star break was that they've climbed all the way up for the season to second in defensive rating behind the Golden State Warriors. Warriors at 104.6, Celtics at 104.9. Their defensive rating since like the turn of since the turn of the calendar is like 90 and like the next closest is like 97 or something. Like it's insane like what the difference is. And with that, their net rating has climbed up to number 1 in the Eastern Conference and number 4 overall in the NBA. So that left me thinking, okay, it's like I know we're really good, defensively with our defensive rating and net rating. Now we're all the way up here. Where are we at offensively? So offensively, the Celtics are still 18th in the league. So I started to look through, and for the last 10 years, I went through and just kind of checked out
You got some
what's
time.
I had a little bit of time. Like I said, I unexpectedly had Monday off, so I had some time.
Yeah.
So I went through and I tried to find the last 10 finals appearances. So both teams from each conference. What was typically the offensive, defensive, and net rating that every team had. And just about every team, with the exception of 2, finished top 10 in both offensive and defensive rating. The lowest offensive rating to go to an NBA finals was the Los Angeles Lakers in the bubble, and they were 11th. So they were
Hmm.
just outside that margin. There's one complete anomaly with where the Cavaliers were like 18th defensive rating and like 20th net rating, but they had LeBron, and
Yep.
it's just an outlier. So
Yeah.
you can throw that
That's
season
an
away. That
above.
was when they beat us in 7 games. It's just LeBron, which also the Lakers were a LeBron team, but they finished 11th. But they're the only team in the last 10 years to finish outside the top 10 in offensive rating and still make it to the finals. So that's the one area that I'm really going to be checking for over this next like 20 games or so that are left, just to see where the Celtics climb. Because I mean, it doesn't guarantee that you're there, but it's going to put you right in the mix if you can hit those two. And I don't know if they're going to climb all the way up to 10, but the closer they get, the better I like their chances. Because I don't think if this team's healthy, this defense isn't going anywhere. It just
Hmm.
becomes, when you get down to it, is Marcus Smart, Derek White, Al Horford, are they going to be enough shooting if that's your, 3 of your main 7 guys? And we know Rob's not shooting, so I'm not even putting him in there. So you got those 3 guys that you got to rely on. Grant's the sniper right now, and then you got
Hmm.
the 2 Jays. So you got to really count on those 3 guys to be able to hit shots when you get into big games and playoff games.
Yeah, and I don't know that they can do it, and that's going to be the biggest question.
It's a big question
But
mark.
more than anything else, even more than that, in my opinion, is can Jason Tatum play like an MVP? Can he continue to be second half Jay, post All-Star break Jay? Like he looks so good, man. Like he really does. And when he gets to this level, when he gets to the point when you're talking about him as being second team All NBA, first team All NBA, and then potentially in the MVP discussion, it doesn't really matter how good Al Horford is or how good Marcus Smart
Yeah.
is because Jason Tatum is, he's going to raise all of that stuff. And I'm just excited to think about what Jason Tatum can be. And it really feels like he's separating himself on this team as that alpha dog. I mean, dude, that dunk, we haven't even talked about the dunk. That dunk on
Yeah.
Andre Drummond
Yeah.
was yeah, we talk about this all the time. Jason Tatum had like PTSD from getting blocked at the rim of the bubble by Bam.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that. Drummond got his fingertips on that ball. And Tatum,
Did he? Okay.
he flushed it right through that. So I think that shit's gone. Tatum's waiting for the next time Bam meets him at the rim. And Tatum looks pretty good, man. So I'm excited about this team. I think that if other teams, we're talking about who are we scared of to play in the playoffs. I think other teams right now have to be looking at the Celtics and being like, I don't want that problem for 7 games.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the big part is that defense isn't going anywhere. And that's why, I don't think there's a single team in the Eastern Conference right now that I'm like, like I said, I wouldn't definitively say we'd win that series, but I'm also not saying we're definitively losing. Like last year, even if JB didn't get hurt, there was zero chance we were beating that Nets.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Fucking Jabari Parker on the for.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm saying even if we were healthy, like that team was not beating the Nets team. Like I just don't see a world in which that would have happened. Like because those 3 guys were healthy for that series. That was the one time we really saw Harden, Irving, and KD all together. So, we'll see. And to your point with Jason Tatum, man, like if he gets to a level, which I don't think we can really fully say he's in that level until another postseason run where he's the main dog, but like. The way that we just talked about Giannis and Embiid and Durant, where regardless of who's around them, we're like, man, that's trouble in the 7-game series. Regardless of whatever the other stuff is around them, that's when this team becomes a truly ultimate problem. But I'm fucking excited, man. I think this is going to be a great end of the season here. It's going to be a lot of fun. So we got the Pistons and Pacers coming up this weekend. And then after that, it is just a sprint to the finish line throughout March and the early part of April. A lot of big games mixed in there. We're going to be kicking it with y'all. We're going to be doing more of these Green with Envy post-game live. So make sure you are following us on all of our social media handles at Green Envy Pod. Follow the 617 podcast. Follow Crowworthy Takes. Make sure you're following at Mini Minnow, at Wilbon13. We're going to be checking in with you throughout the rest of the season. If you are listening to us on the podcast right now and not on the live stream, make sure you subscribe, rate, 5-star, give us that good love. We appreciate it. We want to keep making more and more material and content for you. And if they are listening to us on the podcast, Greg, can you give them one more thought? And can you tell them what they're going to hear on the way out?
The one more thing, King. I just want to shout out to my mom and dad, man. Turned 33 this year.
This is sweet.
They raised me. My mom birthed me, as moms do. And
Pops he's a decent man.
Yeah, my pop's a decent man. That's a reference to our outro song, "The Path" by Black Sheep Optimist, which you will hear in a second. But it's just amazing to have the continued support from my family. And love you, Mom. Love you, Dad. And for everybody that's listening, we are going to now end the podcast through some tears and a cracking voice and listen to Black Sheep Optimist. This one is called "The Path." Peace, everybody.
Peace. Got to get this Knicks jersey off.
Of who I'll be tomorrow. Take these pieces of my secrets and leave them at the